This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is why the Nkuhuma Pride is such a firm favourite.
It's Kinky Tail.
He just looks ready for a fight. This is still her territory.
The Avoca boys are here to stay.
How insane was that?
Good afternoon and welcome to this, the 33rd, I think, episode of Safari Live. What a marvellous afternoon it promises to be. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon David is on camera with me, and I should actually be James, because of course this is the opportunity for us to discuss all things character related, both here in Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa, as well as the Masai Mara in Kenya. James will be up and running at some point. His plan, of course, this afternoon is to break the internet with talks of leopards past. Our beloved leopards. Beloved? That's not a word. It's been an extraordinary week for the characters of Safari Live from two quite specific locations in Africa.
Whenever the dogs are in town, we all whoop and woof with joy while the vehicles and mechanics howl with fear. So it was this week. Tingana continued his rather ominously silent patrols of Djuma with just one grasping song. The little chief is growing up, losing his joy for people on foot, and perhaps beginning to lose his desire for company in general. Meanwhile, the Nkuhumas paid a welcome visit. Tracks indicate that one of their number is in the process of making more for their number. In the Sausage Republic, there was great joy for the pride and further death for the buffalo. While the Olololo clan cubs made friends with David for the first time.
All right, so there you have it. Lots of exciting prospects since the animals have been out and about over the course of the week, which is, of course, to be expected. Well, that is what wild animals do. Now, remember that if you want to ask your questions, you can do that on hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. I can't remember if I've said that already. Alternatively, you can get hold of us in the comments section of YouTube. My plan for the afternoon is to do a cursory look around for the Duke of Djuma Tingana and his consort, the Queen of, what's her name? Tundi. That's it. The Queen of Djuma, Tundi. And failing that, we're going to go and look at the Queen of Djuma's daughter, who is a very firm favourite of mine. I've only seen her a few times. Her name is Kuchava. She's a beautiful female leopard, and she's been hanging out on Chitwa. So, while I go off in search of those leopards, there is one very important missing piece of the puzzle, and his name is Hosanna, and her name's Lauren.
Good afternoon, and welcome to your Safari Lives, episode 33. So, my name is Lauren, and on camera I have Sebastian. And on this quite overcast but very sticky warm afternoon, I am searching for one of my favourite cats, which is, of course, the handsome yet seemingly elusive Mr. Hosanna. Now, he was seen in this area this morning, so we've came to sort of check the whole area around his last spot that he was seen and see if we can track him down. But if he's a flat cat sleeping in amongst the vegetation, it is not going to be an easy find. However, I did have some very good experiences with Hosanna this week, where he was being his perfect flat cat self. So let's take a look at those moments. Hosanna took it easy at the beginning of the week. With his wound healing nicely, His only concern seemed the pesky flies buzzing around his head. He continued to perfect the flat cat position the following day, but this time while watching some Nyala feeding in the distance. He wasn't quite ready to feed himself just yet. Weren't those moments just precious? I love the expression on Hosanna's face where you can almost read what he's thinking. And he certainly does watch his prey species intently. And you can see he's thinking, is this a good moment? Is it not a good moment? Should I go for this? Should I not go for this? And that's exactly what he was thinking about those in Yala. And in the end, he didn't end up going for it. So we've had a search around the area and all the vegetation to no avail at the moment, but we're going to circle back round and see if we can just keep checking, because he was seen here last. The only thing is it's not been that hot a day, so he could have potentially have got up and moved and maybe even went for a little drink. Philip is asking about Hosanna's injury. Yes, it does look a little bit painful, doesn't it? It's definitely healing, though. It's definitely improved, but you can see sort of into the flesh inside, which is not so nice for him. And we don't actually know how he got it. There could have been... Oh, you could really speculate here. It could have been from an animal that he was maybe chasing. Could have been an animal that maybe sort of attacked him, but it is quite small and it's quite circular. So there was thoughts that it could maybe be from even just him falling out of a tree, being a clumsy cat that he is, and he could have caught himself on the way back down from a tree. So we really don't actually know how he got it, but it's about this size and it's perfectly circular. So it doesn't appear to be too deep. So he will recover from it, he will be absolutely fine, but it probably has been painful for him just to sit there, especially when there's flies all around it. So he just needs to keep it clean and he probably will heal from it. And bounce back to his usual Hosanna self that we do not seem to be able to find. Okay, so we're going to continue looking as always, and hopefully we will find him at some point. But for now, let's go across to James, who is set up in the tent, and he's going to tell you all about Hosanna's mother.
Good afternoon, everybody. I do apologise for my very tardy appearance this afternoon. This has got nothing to do with me and everything to do with Marcel, who I am now throwing under the bus. He is our tech person on site, and what he does I do not understand, and so therefore I will blame him for the fact that I am late. I'm very sorry. Today we have got Craig on camera. He has got a fishing hat on, I think. Is it a fishing hat? He might be going fishing after this. I'm not sure what he's going to catch. Please do talk to us, of course, using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. We'd love to hear your questions, especially if they are related to the characters that we're going to show you today. Now, Jamie did indicate that we were going to break the internet with reminiscences, I suppose, of our leopards from the past. Now, I know that you and I have got into some fairly heated debates about our leopards from the past from time to time, but we've all appreciated them and enjoyed them. And I know that there are a lot of new viewers around who perhaps don't know about Shadow and Sindile and Mvula and Karula and Gunyuma, now called the Senegal Bushmail, of course, and Quarantine and their histories. And so we're going to have a look at them because they all do relate, of course, to the current stories unfolding of our leopards here at Djuma. The first clip that we're going to play is of the great queen, Karula. I first met her with the Viamdurenbrak on Mamba Road, which is in the southeastern portion of Djuma. She had killed a bushbuck and she was resting atop a marula tree. That was the first time I saw her. It must have been around July, I think, in 2015. So that was some time ago. Okay, let's have a look at her. There she is. There is the great queen herself. We'll probably just pause it there so that you can appreciate her face. She was what was known as a 3-4 female. Now, actually, I'm going to use a Steenbok horn to point. She should actually have been a 4-4 female. If you look carefully, she's got 1, 2, 3 spots there. There's definitely another one there. But that was never referenced in any of the things with Karula, and there are her other 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those were the only ones ever referenced, 3 and 4 on that side. And that was Karula. She's identifiable, of course, mostly by the wow that is written on her forehead, and I wonder if I can find it. Let's see if she doesn't move her head make it slightly more easy to see. If she turns her head down a bit, can we see it there? No, let me just go back a bit, everybody. Pause it there. There it is. Okay. I can see it now. Well, for a long time I couldn't see it. It's there. W-O-W. Can you see that, everyone? W-O-W. And so that's how we knew it was Karula. She had a wow. Now, the next little sighting that we are going to see here is of her and her last 2 offspring, Shongile and Hosana. Now that, everybody, grew up into my favourite leopard. We think we're 99% sure she's now dead. We're not going to talk about her this week. We are going to talk about her on the eve of her birthday, which of course will be in a little while, because that's Hosana's birthday too, and we'll talk about both of them and their growing up. There are her brown eyes. That's how I identified her. She had very brown eyes. So sweet. This is the first properly good look that we got of her face, and she was a 4-3 female. If you look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 little spots on the other side. All right, that was Shongile, and then here comes her brother, and her brother, of course, Hosana, who we know so very well, who we follow all the time. Carla, you say, tweet little face. Yes, absolutely, cute little face. Hosana's changed some in the last 3 years, hasn't he? That's very sweet. At this stage, I think they were about 8 weeks old. Look at him. Anyway, Karula was a magnificent mother. She raised many litters of cubs over her time, and she captured the hearts of absolutely everyone here. I suppose much like Thandi is doing for many of our new viewers, because she was the queen of this area, that's Karula was, and she was, of course, mother to the current queen, Thandi. Thandi was from her first litter. Look at little Shongile there, creeping round to join her brother and mother. This was the most precious sighting. I was terrified at the time that Karula was going to take exception to us sitting so close to her, but it was almost like she'd brought her little cubs to meet us, to introduce them to us. That's Hosana there. And beautiful Karula. Wasn't that special? So she died. We don't know what happened to her, of course. She disappeared in the April of 2017 she disappeared, and so it'll be 2 years actually that she's been gone come April this year. I can't believe it's been that long. Anyway, we don't know what happened to her. We had a last view of her, I think, on the southern boundary. That was my last view of her. We were doing some night testing with a new nighttime camera. That was my last time I saw her. I was trying to test the night camera, taking pictures of her, and thereafter she disappeared. Nobody has any idea what happened to her. We never found a body. We never found any sign of a scuffle or a struggle or anything like that. She wasn't old enough to go off and die like some old leopards do if they get very old, and so it's highly unlikely that that's what she did. She was only about 13 years old, and so she had a good few years left in her. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to live any longer. Hilary, you say Jamie was the only one that she hissed at. No, she hissed at quite a few people. I watched her hiss at a number of game drives. I watched her charge a number of game drives, and that was simply because they got too close, and often she didn't like the sound of human voices. She'd look up, and if she didn't hiss, she'd certainly open her mouth. A little bit like Thandi was. Shut up! Franklin outside disturbing me. Thandi is much worse, but it's definitely a human voice that triggers the response from both of them. So, yeah, she used to hiss and charge at sometimes if people got too close to her. Thankfully, we didn't get that too much on camera. In fact, it very seldom happened to us because there's only ever one person on the car talking. Paula, you say you wish you were around to meet Karula. Well, that's precisely why we're doing this. And I'm very glad that you are with us, and now you can understand a little bit more about Karula. I mean, we could have picked any one of 1,000 great moments we had with her. She was a fantastic leopard, and certainly until she died, I would have said the most famous leopard in the world. She's watched and was followed by a greater number of people than any other leopard I know of. All right, I'm going to prepare my next historical leopard. Let's go up to the Marsi Mara, where Isaac has managed to find himself, I think, the newest members of the clan.
Well, here we are with the Olololo clan of hyenas. There are so many, we cannot even count how many there are. My name is Isaac Rotich, and I have Bungay on camera. Well, it is my third visit to this great Kenneth, and I can see we have one babysitter and a lot of babies. I'm asking myself very many questions because historically and in writing they say that hyenas only the matriarch give birth to two, where if they are born of the same kind, one would kill another and the other one will die, so the one will take all the food. But here we have lots of little cubs and of different ages. I'm asking myself, do we have more females here, matriarchs giving birth to more cubbies, or is it not true that only the matriarch give birth? All the hyenas give birth. I have different ages. Those are actually much older. They're about 4 months. There is one that's only about 2 months that I saw go back to the den, and it's really black. He might come out later, or she. These are about, they look like 3 months old. These are actually 4 months old, you see. Very curious at this age. Always looking at, they are looking at me curiously. Yes, while I'm looking at this, I would like to share some nice new cubbies. We call it the Olololo breakaway. One week had passed without seeing the Ololo clan cubs. We were worried. Thankfully, our concerns for their safety were unfounded. The cubs, about 6 weeks old now, are growing fast. They're well fed, mother providing for all their needs. Hyenas have a pseudo penis, which makes it difficult to sex the cubs at this stage. Well, this beautiful female that you just witnessed has her own den and 2 cubbies, and they're about 2 months old, and we think she's a subordinate female that has decided to give birth far away from everybody so that she can raise her young ones at peace and then eventually introduce them to the rest of the clan. I don't know, we think she belongs to this clan, but she has decided to give birth quite far away. I have 2 theories. Maybe she wants to start her own clan, or she felt like if she gave birth here, the young ones would have been killed because there's too much competition, so she decided to give birth there. But who am I to say anything? Here, anything is possible, and nature doesn't read books. So sometimes those things written in the books can be broken, and very soon we will know exactly what's happening. The female you saw earlier, as I said, she is the babysitter over here. Hyenas do this when they have more cubs. I have seen and have witnessed one female will be left behind to take care of everybody, just in case a wild dog, a lion, Harashli, you say the babysitter must be professional. Yes, I'm sure you cannot be given the responsibility of taking care of more than 8 cubs. That's the ones that I've counted here without knowing exactly what to do. And also I think she must be very feisty and actually dangerous to, she must have possessed all the traits of being protective and at the same time being gentle to take care of these young cuties. Yes, this is the famous spotted hyena, an animal portrayed to be a scavenger, dirty, mean, carnivore, but actually they are very sweet, and actually it's one of my favorite animals. Here we have a little guy, and he has broken the rules, and he is not afraid anymore, and he is coming closer to our vehicle. I don't know how much closer he's gonna get. Mind you, we're quite far distance. We don't interfere with the behavior of animals. The distance that is proposed, which is about 20-25 meters, and he is coming close to me, and there's nothing I can do. Here, these guys are still very much dependent on their mother's milk, but at the same time, the adults do bring chunks of meat for them. Unlike, dogs, hyenas don't regurgitate the food, so they bring solid food, as in bones, skin, and sometimes pieces of meat. Yes, and while I let this guy come closer, so I'm going to go quiet, I'm going to link you to Jamie and see what Tingana is up to.
I am not sure that how aware the Mara team are as to just how jealous I am of their hyena cub sightings, because of course our Juma clan have vanished. Lauren saw Pretty yesterday, but didn't manage to follow her. There's a possibility that they're denning on Torchwood, of all places. So I'm very jealous of little hyena cub sightings. Now, for James and myself, this, and most of you actually, this is very much a trip down memory lane. This is was one of Karula's favorite pans. And if we saw the tracks for Karula and Hosanna and Shongile coming to this direction off Mamba Road, we used to come here and double check whether or not they were here. And that's one of the reasons that this road actually came about. It is Mamba Loop. It didn't exist back in those days. And it came about purely because we spent so much time checking this pan for the Queen. And those were the days. I'm trying to remember when I first saw Karula. And I can't remember if it was the Steenbokkie sighting, where she ate an entire Steenbok in one sitting, everything except the bottom jaw, or if it was the time I had a very brief view of her at Gallagher. I just remember my cameraman shouting at me. He was furious with me that day because I couldn't keep up with her. It was all just too much, and there was this voice in my ear, and I couldn't quite manage it. And I remember Andrew getting so cross with me. Oh, he was angry. Making me look bad. Sorry. Darby would never shout at me like that. Never, ever. But I can't quite remember exactly when the first time was that I saw her. I think it might have been the Steenbok sighting when Scott tracked her on foot. Now, those were the days, Kirsty. I cannot hear you. I'm really sorry. Something very odd is going on. I don't quite know what that was. Lou is saying that my cameraman must have been Viam. It wasn't, it was Andrew. It was Andrew that day. Viam did get cross with me in a Karula sighting once. It was because I was watching her hunt, and I didn't know the area as well as I do now, and I let her go into a black monkey or a monkey orange thicket, and she never came out again, and we lost her. And Viam was decidedly upset with me, but very stoically so. Viam doesn't really express much. But those, of course, were the days. Karula wandering around, and of course Tingana, for me back then, very much in his prime, and not looking quite the way he does now.
The Duke's silence has been disconcerting. There was a time when his rasping saws echoed through Djuma almost every night. Now, he has been gliding through his territory like an imposing but silent ghost of his former self. And and squirrel snacks will only go so far to sate the appetite of a dominant male.
It's disconcerting, the way that Tingana has been behaving over the course of the last few weeks. He's still huge. He is still a massive leopard, and I'm hoping that this is just a dip in his fortunes, and that over the course of the next few weeks he's going to make a comeback. Because I remember Tristan saying to me, sort of sometime when I came back from leave this month, that he was looking really good. He was looking big and strong, and his muscles were positively bulging at the seams of his skin. So perhaps he's just going through a temporary dip in fortune. I'm actually looking for him now in this area. I wonder how he feels when a female disappears like Karula. I guess we'll never know. Probably doesn't feel anything, really, most likely, and let's be honest. Okay, so while we carry on, off you go. I'm sure you're all dying to be back with James so that you can retrace the footsteps of our memory lane.
One of the greatest things about being in the tent, especially in summer, is the amount of life that lives all around the tent. I think if we didn't come here at least once a week, would be entirely subsumed by nature and eventually disappear entirely, which is the wonderful thing about the earth and its ability to recover from our rather vast footprint. That is a bushbuck ram, and he's very relaxed, and that's probably because he lives virtually in our camp. And so he knows we're not about to leap on his back and eat him. Are we? No, we aren't. Hello. He's now greeting me. Oh, he's leaving. All righty, Craig, we can return back to the tent. And the next leopard we're going to discuss, I think, is the most controversial, because I have my theories on her and others have their theories on her. And, well, we'll never know whether any of the theories are true or whether they're just wild conjecture. Most of the theories we have about all of the animals out here are, in fact, just wild conjecture and not based on thoroughly peer-reviewed research. The next leopard is Shadow. Let's start her up. Right, now that's Shadow on the right-hand side of your picture, and that's not Barbara, her last offspring, there on the left. There we go. And Shadow was also a 3-4 female, and that's not Barbara, her last offspring. And what I think was, let me just try and move this on a little bit here. I don't know if you recognise that, everybody, but to me that looks almost a dead ringer for Tundi. They've got those same droopy eyes, and they are, of course, litter mates. Shadow was the litter mate of Tundi, and they were born, obviously, on the same day, which makes sense because they were litter mates. Not so. All right, let's continue this little one. There she goes. She had a bit of a limp. She had a bit of an attitude, but she wasn't nearly as angry as Tundi was. Of course, the great controversy about her comes in the fact that she never managed to raise a youngster to adulthood. And we'll talk about Sandila, the closest she came. This little leopard here disappeared with Shadow. We don't know if Shidulu had something to do with it. We're really not sure. Shidulu, of course, now occupies Shadow's territory entirely, and that is a small, thin slither on the western side of Djuma, and then she's into Arathusa. Now, we think she was about 12 when she died. She was last seen around about February 2018. That's Tingana, of course. That's not Shadow. She hasn't suddenly morphed into a big fatty. And this, remember, we've spoken quite a lot about Tundi and Tlalamba and Tingana and their relationship and the fact they have been so close quite a lot. I had forgotten about the sighting until we found it again. Now watch this. I want you to watch carefully. I'm going to go back. Watch little Not Barbara here. Watch her mouth as she goes. Can you see that? She's chuffing. and they both immediately show submission, and then they both chuff. It's such a sweet thing to see. Shadow says, "Don't worry about Dad, he's a grumpy old sod," and off they go. Wonderful sighting of Shadow and not Barbara and Tingana. So that was a bit sad. She was born in December 2006 and unfortunately didn't make it into adulthood. And like I say, we don't know if she has a surviving offspring. Sindila, who we'll discuss a little bit later, has obviously dispersed from this area. He was the only male that we know of, and we have theories about why he survived versus some of the others. Anyway, those two disappeared. It may have been that Hukumuri caused their demise, but we really don't know, and that's very sad. I found her a slightly tragic figure. There was a lot of talk when I initially got here that the reason she wasn't successful was she didn't hoist her kills as often as other leopards hoisted their kills, but you know, there are lots of areas where leopards don't hoist their kills and they're just as successful. My theory, and it cannot be proved and it's fairly way out, is that she had some kind of physiological difference where she used to come into estrus much too early after she'd given birth, and that meant that she mated and didn't give the youngsters sufficient care before they had to go off and be on their own. That might be entirely fictitious. It might be, and this is the sort of predominating theory amongst the leopard lovers out there, the theory is that she was just very unlucky. It is obviously extremely difficult to raise a youngster to adulthood in the cat world, and she failed to do it at all. She actually didn't raise Sindila. Basically, that was done by some people at a rehabilitation centre not too far from here. So she may have just been unlucky. She may have been physiologically different. She may have just been a bad mother. Now, I know you're not allowed to say that on this show because people get extremely upset if you suggest that any of the animals out here are talented or less talented than others in some way or not. But I don't see why that shouldn't be the case. I don't see why it is that in human society some people are better mothers than others. Some people are better piano players than others. I think it's quite possible. Anyway, Sharon, you're wondering why it is that not Barbara got her name, or how it is that she got her name. Well, she got her name because, and it wasn't an official name, because we got to her one day, and I like to name these animals quite early on, and I called her Barbara and then quickly said, no, her name's not Barbara, and you all then latched onto it and said, no, her name's not Barbara. And the reason I did that was that people get very upset if you name animals and don't go through the due process of doing so. I'm not going to go into the exceptionally boring process that takes place, the political ramifications, the fighting, the lobbying and nonsense that goes on when we name these animals. Anyway, that's why she was not Barbara, which I found very odd. Philip, leopards don't get renamed very often. Interestingly, Sindila was renamed and then renamed again. Back to Sindila. Sindila, we called him Sindila. In fact, I think you guys chose the name Sindila. It's supposed to mean survivor, I think. And then what normally happens with this tradition is that the guide who finds the animal, he and his tracker, are allowed to name it. And so that was passed on to a chap at Arathusa who found Sindile when he was little. He called him Madiba, and Madiba, of course, was the praise name of Nelson Mandela, our ex-president. And many people felt that was a bit off, naming a leopard after him. I really don't have an opinion on the matter, and so he became Sindile once again. I have absolutely no opinion on it because I know that he didn't care at all. Remember, of course, I called Shongile and Hosanna George and Charlotte to begin with after the royal youngsters, and Hilary, you just saying that you enjoyed George and Charlotte. I thought they were great names, I must say, but most people didn't agree with me. They thought they should have Shangaan names. Well, fair enough. Each to his own. So that was Shadow. I'd be interested to know what you thought. I know many of you have your theories on her, and every time I've suggested over the years that she may not have been a very good mother, you take it as a personal affront and an insult to her, which of course it isn't. There was nothing intentional about her failure to raise youngsters. It was just a rather tragic character, one of our tragic characters. We have some triumphant characters and we have some tragic ones, and she was one of the latter. Let's go across to Lauren, who is not in the slightest bit tragic. She is Scottish.
So our search for the elusive Hosanna continues. We haven't been so lucky today, but not given up just yet. Now, a lot of time has passed since we did last see him, to be fair, so he could have potentially gone anywhere. There is absolutely no rhyme or reason that he would have necessarily stayed in the same place. When a cat tends to wake up, if it's a very, very hot day, they stay flat for a very long time, especially if they're full. So if he's not full and it's not that hot, he might not stay in the same area. So this week I did have some amazing experiences with the Nkahuma Pride, who we might try and locate today as well if it's possible. And one beautiful sighting we did see is when the whole pride was just struggling a little bit to wake up that morning. So let's go and take a look at exactly how that went. The Nkahumas had a rather relaxed start to their morning. Some were not quite ready to rise and start their day. Others were sharpening their claws and beginning their morning stretches. The purple-eyed lioness was searching for an olfactory update, displaying her recent dental work. The young Nkahuma male was still in a confused state of slumber, while the Mangani male, looking much recovered from his mange, appeared ready to take the day head-on. So we have located Hosanna, or should I say my amazing and wonderful cameraman spotted Hosanna. I do not know how he did it. Okay. Seb thinks he can get you a shot from this position. So let's see. Oh, Seb, how did you do that?
I turned around at the right time.
Oh my goodness, look at that. Now we are very, very, very far away right now, but we've managed just sitting in the middle of the road. Okay, now that we've shown you him, we are going to get ourselves a little bit closer. So our fat cat did obviously wake up at some point today, and there he is saying, hello guys, I know you're talking about me. Now, the Nkahumas were seen this morning as well, but nobody quite knows exactly where they are. Lions tend to move a little bit more than leopards do, I feel. They tend to travel a little bit further, whereas Hosanna and Tingana are a little bit easier to spot. Okay, so we are going to go up and get a little bit closer to our boy, but for now, let's go up to Isaac and see what he is up to.
Yes, I'm still here with this huge clan of hyenas. And while you're away, I have seen another set of very young cubbies. And one of them looked very malnourished. I suspect he actually was in a fight with his sibling and eventually managed to either kill him or to starve him to death. And so he survived. Hyenas, if they give birth to the same kind, young ones will try and kill each other. And the main reason is so that they can take all the food. Remember, hyenas are only one of the few animals that are born with about 7 millimeter, canines for fighting, actually. So they will fight each other to death and try and get all the food. Hyenas in the Mara are in no shortage, and we have them in plenty. This is one of our biggest clan, the Olololo clan. Remember, hyenas do hunt for themselves, although the one mistaken for many, many, many years. That is the one I was talking about. You can tell he's trying, he's doing well, but you can tell he's bony. So he must have maybe killed his sibling, because I don't see his age mate here, and so he survived. They do that when they're born of the same sex. They'll try and get rid of one another. Anyway, let me continue. They very efficient hunters, but they will also scavenge. Once they've killed whatever they've gotten, they'll eat. Each hyena can eat about a third of its body weight, and hyenas are known to utilize most of the meat they kill. that is including bones, skin, vertebra. Very, very efficient, because they have those strong jaws. They will use them as much as possible. Here, I'm still to get an answer from somebody why we have this many young ones in this clan, whereas they say that only one female give birth. While I continue staking out this clan, I'll share something with you from the Sausage Tree Pride, the masters of killing buffalo. The 5 lionesses of the Sausage Tree Pride are a force to be reckoned with. They were able to bring down a male buffalo of approximately 600 kilograms, and it was a feast for all. The young cubs are now able to feed on meat in addition to their mother's milk. As these cubs indulged in delicious meal, table manners were thrown out the window. I think the Sausage Tree Pride is a power to be reckoned. For them to bring down a fully grown buffalo, being just 5 females, for me, it is still beyond words. Okay, here is another young one that has just come from my right, which means it's another young one. Question is, how many females are matriarchs here? Or this clan has broken what has been written in the books? All these have been waited on by one female. She must be one tough female to be looking at taking care of all these guys. And you ask me how long before the spots appear. From the age of about 3 to 4 months, we start seeing the spots. And onwards they become brighter, but they are born black. Well, these guys, if I was to make a sudden move here, all of them will run to different holes that have got interlinking holes. So in case of danger or water, if water goes in one, they can come out the other. If there is a fire, or, they can go out different directions if there are too many. So it's a clever homestead that they have. And also, in case of anything, if I move, they will run because they know the other adults are not here. They are taught to scamper quickly to the nearest den. This is one healthy young one, maybe about 3.5 months. He's very curious. I think that is a cousin, also coming out. Very brave. Hello, how are you? Yes, have you ever seen? Yeah, have you ever seen a Land Rover? Well, let me take you all the way to Greater Cougar, where Jamie has got Hosanna.
So Hosanna skipped and hopped and jumped over into Bufosuk, which is an area we are not able to traverse. So we did have him. He was sitting beautifully on the road. And he just skipped. I've never seen him jump that high, actually. I'm not sure if he was after a scrub here or what, but he's just gone completely over to the left here, and we've lost him. It took us all this time to find him. So, I don't think we're going to be able to locate him. The grass is very high, and it's an area that we just cannot traverse. So, I think we're going to travel on, unfortunately, and look for lions. Just going to go really slowly in case we do spot them, but it's looking a little bit unlikely. So while we do try to find you a cat that's going to stay still for more than a few minutes, let's go back over to James in the tent to talk about Shungile.
I think that is really, really unfortunate. She found him. She set out to find him. They did find him, and then he disappeared. And I can just feel her frustration. If I was her right now, I'd be saying a lot of words that I couldn't say live on air because I would be so very frustrated. All right, I promised that we would have a look at Sindile, the offspring of shadow that may or may not still be extant. There he is over there. You can see him. He was a 3-3 male leopard, and so he had 3 spots. You can see them there. 1, 2, 3, and over there, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now this particular little clip here shows an adventure that he had, or a misadventure, that then resulted in what I think, if he is surviving, is possibly the reason he survives. Have a look. So this was in August 2015, and Brent was following him when he caught what Brent thought was a steenbok. On closer examination, of course, you can see that that particular steenbok has in fact got paws and not hooves. And if you look a little bit closer still, you will see that it is, of course, a dog. Now, leopards are famed for catching other predators. You would have seen this animal and, thought nothing of it. The question of how and why the animal was in the reserve was a good one to ask. And, of course, the real reason is normally that they have got rabies, that they are rabid dogs that have left home and they go wandering like this. So what we did was eventually Brent Leo Smith, Brent had to basically announce this and talk about this to all of the viewers, because the viewers were watching this show. I'm not sure how many of you watching now actually saw this. The dog, of course, is pretending to be dead. It looks like it's, for all the world, like it's gone. And watch this. And many of you saying you've never seen this before, which is great. So we'll show you this. And, there's so many layers to this particular story on domestic animal care, leopards and their interaction with human beings. And here we have the most interesting part of this particular clip. Brent Leo Smith, bottom right, you can see there, gorgeous hair. And this was before the days of the hat mic, of course, so he didn't have a hat on. And there are the members of the Sabi Sands. And Brent, basically, they said, we need to get the leopard out of the tree. And they were too scared to get out of the car. But Leo Smith said, well, we just get out the car and clap a bit and leopard will run. So Brent did that and off he went. Okay, and what you can see there is the leopard. You can just see his white tail going off there. And there's the hound. The hound is miraculously now alive again, and the hound then runs off. Sindile goes off there, just in front of Brent. Brent's looking at the hound, and the dog runs off in the other direction. Now, that unfortunate hound met an end from a .375 caliber Holland & Holland Magnum about 2 days later. So that dog was shot. Any dog that comes into the reserve is shot on sight. And the reason for that, I know many of you are probably gasping and diving under your desks and now fanning your faces like this, the cruelty. The reason is that 90% of the time when they come into the reserve, they are rabid. And of course, you cannot risk being bitten by a rabid dog. You can't risk that happening and then being bitten, an animal like Sindile eating a rabid dog, because they will contract rabies. And of course, once an animal contracts rabies, there's nothing you can do for them. Once they become symptomatic, there is absolutely nothing you can do for them. The same thing goes for human beings. There is one person on record that has ever survived rabies. She survives, I think it's somewhere in Northern America. I always forget. It might even be in Michigan or Milwaukee, somewhere around there. I know that one's a state and one... is Milwaukee a state? No, I think it's a town. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She lives up there. She still displays neurological symptoms. Basically, what they did was freeze her, put her into a coma, and slowly bring her out a couple of months later. It's a very interesting case study. They haven't managed to replicate it with anyone else. There is currently a woman from Chile in a... sorry, I've missed something from Kirsten there. There's currently a girl in Chile who has got rabies. They're trying to give her the same sort of treatment. She is still alive. She's in an induced coma. Those are the only two people. So rabies is immensely difficult to deal with. And so that's why we shoot dogs on sight. So that whole story is to tell you why they get shot on sight. That dog was shot. Its brain was sent off to the vet. That's how you check if they've got rabies, and it was rabid. So now we knew that this leopard had been in contact with a rabid dog, and that meant that we had to deal with a leopard. And there were two schools of thought. One, you just go and put the leopard down. He was very relaxed around vehicles. All you had to do was go next to him, park next to him, and you could have shot him in the same way that the dog was shot. They decided not to do that, and there was a huge amount of criticism for the approach. I think that they made exactly the right decision. We caused the problem, or humans caused the problem by allowing the dog in, so we had a duty, I think, to try and fix it. And so what they did was they darted him and they put him into quarantine in a place not too far from here in the mountains at Maholoholo, and he was kept there, isolated from human beings, fed, and he was kept there, I think it was 6 months. Was it as long as 6 months? I think it was 6 months. And then they released him again. They wouldn't tell us where they were going to release him. I cannot for the life of me understand why, but they wouldn't tell anybody where they released him. It was 8 months, sorry. It wasn't even 6 months, it was 8 months. And he showed no signs of rabies. Then they brought him back here and they released him somewhere. We don't know where. Well, a couple of weeks later, he pitched up in his mother's territory. He was absolutely fine and he was wearing a big collar. And have a look what happened here. Again, Brent Leo Smith was the chap who happened to be in the area when it happened. There's me talking. That's a bit awkward. And his second clip is over here. I'll just make it nice and big. There he is, 16th of June, 2016. That, of course, is Youth Day, appropriately. And I'm just going to... No, you'll hear the sound from the other side there. So he's got a collar, and that's his mother. That's Shadow. So what he did was he came straight back into the area where he was born. Now, they told us they weren't going to release him around here. They wouldn't tell us where they did release him. So wherever they did, I don't know. But he came straight back home, which was absolutely astounding because I don't believe that they released him in this area. And the reason that his mother is very upset, of course, is that she had another cub at this stage. Another unsuccessfully raised cub. Unfortunately, this cub died too. Could have been him that killed it. Highly unlikely, but it was possible. So Sindile, at this stage, on the 16th of June 2016, is just under 2 years old. So he's much younger than Hosanna is now. In this particular picture, he's a good year younger than Hosanna, year and a bit younger, and quite capable of we didn't know if he'd be able to look after himself, but eventually we knew that he could because we found kills and that sort of thing, and we saw him on kills. But he came straight back into his mother's territory, and I don't think that he was actually a threat to her new cub at all. Here she is calling the new cub, and eventually all three of them were seen together. And Brent Leo Smith actually did this sighting. It was a TV show we had. We had 2 TV shows in June, and he did this all completely live. That cub appeared during an advert break, and so he went ballistic, and we basically had to give him 4 days off, poor old Brent, because he was so excited by the whole thing. Anyway, so that was the story of Sindile. Sindile then disappeared, and I think I'm just going to check here quickly when the last time we saw him was. It doesn't actually, I don't remember exactly when it was. It wasn't too long after this that we saw him last. I saw him last on a termite mound, not too far from here, with his collar. We followed him and followed him. He vomited up a tapeworm, and then he disappeared. Now, it's entirely expected that he should have disappeared. His collar stopped working, the battery ran out, it probably fell off, and he then disappeared. And so it's entirely possible that he is somewhere in the Greater Kruger National Park as a territorial male leopard. He would, of course, be over 4 years old now, and so he could be a territorial male leopard. Nobody knows, and, well, I suppose it's quite nice that we don't know. Maybe he'll turn up on a picture someday somewhere. Maybe James Richard will identify him in Mozambique somewhere. James, go find Sindile, please. Anyway, Monique, you say he was your favourite leopard. I spent hours with that cat, hours and hours, because he was so easy to find. You'd find him in the southwestern boundary, just sitting. Often Shadow would leave him for days on end, and he'd be hunting mongoose and squirrels and all sorts of things on his own. And that's when I began to think that there was something not quite right with Shadow and her mothering skills. And I think it was physiological, because she'd leave him for much longer than I'd ever seen any other leopard mother leave her offspring. So that was Sindile. Let's hope that he is still, in fact, alive and carries Shadow's genetic legacy around with him. Okay, let's go back down to Chitwa now, where Jamie Patterson has managed to find herself another member of the royal lineage.
Well, there you go. From a chat about Shadow and Sindile to Sindile's cousin and Shadow's niece. The absolutely stunning Kuchava, who up until a moment ago was beautifully perched on the edge of a not-so-beautiful setting. But unfortunately, she's just heard something and she's just got up and moved away. Kuchava, of course, I'm just watching her. I've got my head on a swivel. I'm just watching her because she is going to vanish and there's no way on earth I can get up the quarry wall. So just to clarify with where I am, I'm in a deep pit. It is a man-made pit. It is a borrow pit for doing things like putting sand on airstrips and roads. So that's where we are at the moment. Oh, Sindile, I'm convinced one day he's going to turn up. I don't know where, and perhaps we won't ever see a picture of him. But I'm convinced that's going to be the case. Kuchava, I have not seen you in 2 years, I would say, give or take. The first time I saw her, I didn't even know who she was. In fact, the first time I saw her, I don't think she even had a name. She hadn't been named yet. The beautiful Kuchava, granddaughter of Karula, and definitely one of the most beautiful leopards that we see here. You can see a bit of her mom in her. You can see a little bit of Tundi in her face, but otherwise she's got a lovely combination there of looks. Noriko, you're going to get me into trouble. Noriko says that Kuchava is much prettier than her mother, Tundi. My goodness me, I couldn't possibly tell you whether or not I agree with you. I do. I do. I love Tundi, but Tundi's beautiful in her own way. Yes, good girl. He's a good girl. Thank you very much. That was very kind of you. Tundi is a lot of things. She is spirited, she is small, she is sassy, she's incredibly courageous. But I don't think she's the most beautiful leopard I've ever seen. But beauty is all in the eye of the beholder. Kuchava is gorgeous, though. Now, speaking of Tundi, while Kuchava rests and while I wait for the opportunity to get a good view of her belly, let us go and see what Tundi got up to this week.
Queen Tundi finally returned to Djuma this week, sporting a deep wound of mysterious origin. It didn't seem to bother her too much as she stalked through the grass, but probably didn't help her normally grumpy mood very much. Her day was about to get worse, though, as a curious hyena sloped onto the scene. Though it was highly unlikely that the hyena was going to pick a squabble, Tundi took to the trees for a bit of solitude. Alas, it was not to be, as she found herself looking down on yet another intruder. A marula tree might not have been her best choice at this time of year. Trapped, Tundi was forced into practicing her fearsome glare. Not that she needs much practice.
I do not feel that Kuchava has inherited her mother's glare. She's got a stare, but not a glare. And there is a very clear difference. That final look that Tundi gave the camera in that particular clip was truly, I think it was probably one of the most relatable expressions I have ever seen on a leopard. It was the expression of a leopard who has just had it, who has just had one of those days and it's just not got any better, where Kuchava has a slightly anxious look to her expression. And Kuchava, of course, basically means nervous, and describes Kuchava's temperament. I'm not sure exactly whether or not she spent a lot of time with vehicles when she was little. Lauren, I think there is a very good chance that her father was Mbula. I think there's a good chance she is now, she must be close on 5.5, 6 years old. Give me a second. 2017, she was around about 3. So, yeah, about 5, 6 years old, which if you go back in time would be when Mvula was dominant over a massive area through Djuma and across Torchwood. So, yes, I think that there's a good chance that Mvula is her father. Not sure whether the Torchwood male was dominant at that time, but perhaps he has a potential to be her father as well. It certainly wasn't Tingana, I wouldn't have thought, because at that point Tingana was still in the west and he hadn't pushed all the way to the east yet. And when I first saw Tingana, he was all the way on the western boundary of Arathusa. Those of you who remember my job interview will remember Tingata. Tingata, the male leopard. Tingata and the Styx Pride. The Styx Pride, well, I mean, you know, it was a beautiful drive. The Styx Pride had cubs. I subsequently found out after my job interview that it was Tingana and the Styx Pride. I thought Stig didn't make very much sense at the time, but I wasn't really in a position to ask many questions. Okay, well, we sit with Tundi's much quieter-natured daughter. Lauren is full of successes this afternoon. Not only did she find Hosanna, she's now found some lions for you.
So from one cat that evaded us, we have just driven a mere not that far. I'm not even going to pretend I can judge the distance. And we've came across a different type of cat that are completely flat. Now, there are some other lionesses in the bushes, but here we're able to get the best view of a female Nkahuma lioness and a male who I believe could potentially be an Avoca male, but unfortunately this is the best angle we've had of him, so I'm not able to completely look at him. So I'm guessing it's an Avoca, but I can't confirm that right now. And this pair are obviously sleeping very closely to one another. Look at that. Oh, they are. It will not be too long before they get up and mate. But I'm not sure. We're really not sure because this is the best view we can get of them. They are also in Buffalo's Hook, the area we cannot traverse. So we're on the boundary line just now, and they're literally just off the boundary. So this is the view we've got of them, but I think it's going to be important that we keep really close eyes on them in case they just get up and start mating, which would be so wonderful to see. So I've actually spent a lot of time with the Nkahumas this past week. One sighting you've actually already seen, and there was another very interesting sighting where I might have crashed into a tree trying to follow them, and the lioness pride were traveling together. So before I go any further into exactly what happened, let's take a look. With empty bellies indicating the Nkahumas could use a buffalo buffet, the pride was on the move. Two of the lionesses spotted a small herd of buffalo blending into the thick verdant bush, but seemingly they were the only ones intent on following this hunt through. After a failed attempt, realization dawned on them. They were now alone. Looking glum, they began contact calling, desperately trying to locate the rest of their pride. Sighting that actually was, apart from my tree crashing, it was a little bit sad actually, because all the pride were travelling along the road together. They normally stick together, especially the Nkahumas. It's a very cohesive group. And two of the lionesses, were obviously spotted the buffalo. They spotted the buffalo long before I did, and they took the opportunity and went for it, but sadly the other members of the pride did not. So they ended up getting lost, and we actually lost the pride as well. So we followed those two lionesses for quite some time before they crossed the boundary, and they just looked so sad. They were almost stressed, actually. They were contact calling after contact calling and pacing. They picked up their pace and they were desperately trying to seek out the other members of the Pride. So it was really, really quite sad to watch. And they will have reunited, without a doubt, but it was obviously quite a stressful time for these lionesses to realise that the rest of the Pride did not follow, and they've managed to get separated. And of course, with the vegetation so thick like this, it's very difficult to see. Hosanna just disappeared right in front of our eyes. So it's really easy to lose one another in this bush very, very quickly. And that is obviously what happened with the Nkahuma Pride earlier this week. I almost said Nkapuma. That would be an interesting version of the name. Anyway, I think we'll stick with Nkahuma. So these lions have not moved much at all, and there are other lionesses around, but I really couldn't tell you how many. We want to keep our eyes on these two, as they could potentially be mating, and that is exactly what we would love to see. It would top off a very exciting day. But unfortunately, they're not moving very much. Becky's saying she would love to see Amber Eyes raise a litter, and so would I. I think she would be an absolutely incredible mother, and there's obviously a lot of speculation at the minute that Amber Eyes is indeed pregnant. So I don't believe it's been officially confirmed. It is quite difficult to work out when a lion or even a leopard is pregnant, but it seems to be the verdict that she is. So there's a very short pregnancy, very short gestation period of 3.5 months. So if she is pregnant, if this is indeed the case, to potentially an Avoca male, we might have little avocados running around very soon. And that would just be that would be absolutely wonderful for everybody here in Juma. So we don't know, but we are obviously waiting with bated breath, Becky, as we do hope for little avocados. And it could not be an Avoca male. Lioness are promiscuous. They will mate with many males, of course, but she was sighted regularly seen mating with one of the Avocas. So again, it's all speculation. Nothing is actually 100% confirmed. So much for hoping these two were going to get up. Now, lions mate regularly and frequently, and it continues on for almost up to a week, between 5 to 7 days. So if they are indeed mating, if that is what they are doing, then there is hope they may get up just yet. But for now, let's send you across to James, who has plenty more to say about his leopards.
Yet again, we find ourselves fascinated by the sight of animals mating with each other, a contradiction that I have discussed with you many times. This flower is a sesame flower, which I pointed out, I think it was on drive yesterday afternoon, actually. Yes, a beautiful sesame flower. There it is, Sesamum alatum, as far as I can work out. And apparently it grows quite nicely in gardens. I should send it to my mother. She'd quite like to grow it in her garden, I'm sure. And it's certainly one of the most beautiful flowers I think we get out here. Okay, well, this is not some flower show, of course. This is a character-driven leopard history show. And the leopard that we're going to look at now is our friend now known as the Senegal bush male. The Senegal bush male, before he became known as the Senegal bush male, was Kunuma. And Kunuma was one of the offspring of Karula, and he was born in 2012 in December. Here he is. That's him there, Kunuma, in April. So he was just over 3 years old then, and you can see that he's got 2 spots on his nose. You see that? 2 spots on his nose. I've got a record here that says he's got a 3-3 spot pattern. I don't know how anybody's worked that out. Anyway, let me just carry on playing. I'm pretty sure that's 2. Yeah, 2 again. There he is. You can see he's got that sort of teenager look on his face, and I know this is a huge favourite of Brent Leo Smith's. This leopard was his favourite for a long time. I found him to be of a character not entirely unlike his sisters. Tundi, I mean. There. 3 on this side. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Yeah. So, 2-3 male, I'm going to call him. And what he did was he dispersed away from here, spent a bit of time at Cheetah Plains, and then went down into Mala Mala. And his territory actually probably borders that of his brother, Quarantine. His mother was Karula. His father, we think, was Mvula. And we'll talk about Mvula a little bit later. Now, I say that he has the temperament of his, certainly the look and the temperament of his sister, because, well, I'm going to show you a picture recently taken of him that will answer or tell you that is in fact the case. And I know this because my first meeting of him, I think, was probably around then. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the remains of the kill. He had just killed a fairly large kudu on his own, and I drove up and stopped. And I don't know if you remember this, but Brian, who used to work for us, he was quite a good beatboxer. And Brian, we were waiting for somebody to link to us, and Brian started beatboxing, and I started trying to join in with it. And we turned around, and this leopard was flying at the car. He got very upset with us. And we were 30 meters from him. So we shut up, and he snarled, and then he went back to his kudu and just kept looking at us like Tandi does. And this is a late or recent picture taken of him. I'm not sure who took it. It probably says at the bottom. Anyway, that's where he is, at Mala Mala. So down south of his brother's territory. I can try and show you on a map a little bit later. And for the very next picture that you look at is him doing exactly the same thing. So not a particularly friendly fellow. I'm sure that just happens to be 2 photographs that have been posted because they look like quite vicious leopard photographs, but he's probably not that unpleasant. Anyway, he is now obviously just over 6 years old, so into his prime now, and I think he and Quarantine, and we'll discuss Quarantine a little bit later, started quite young as territorial male leopards, and I think they're doing very well where they are. And unfortunately, I really didn't get to spend much time with Kunuma because by the time I started in May of 2015, he had already pressed on. Well, we saw him once or twice, but he pressed on fairly soon thereafter and found himself a territory down on the Sand River at Mala Mala, which is very nice for him. It's a very nice part of the world to live. So that was Kunuma. I'm not sure if many of you remember him too much, but many of you are saying that you love his eyes. I think when you see his father, we think that was his father, Mvula. It was his eyes that certainly got me when it started, and they had slightly bluish eyes. They weren't, I wouldn't describe them as azure or sapphire, but they were a slightly blue colour. So that's Kunuma, and I'm afraid that's all I have to say about Kunuma because I really didn't know him very well. If you do want to find out more about him, just go onto Instagram or onto YouTube, and well, not YouTube so much, but Facebook, and check out the Senegal Bushmail, and you'll find lots of pictures of him. Let's go back down to Chitwa. Chitwa now, just off in that direction where Guchava is with Jamie.
Chitwa with the lovely Kuchava, who would be, oh goodness, Kunuma would be her uncle. Therefore, she is his niece. There you go. It gets a little bit complicated when you talk about leopard family trees, especially one as fruitful as Karula's was. I saw Kunuma once and once only, I think. Maybe once, maybe twice. But it was very brief. It was just at the point where he was dispersing. And he vanished off. I didn't see Quarantine until we started driving Cheetah Plains, if I remember correctly. But I heard many a story from Brent about the antics of snarly Kunuma. Now, obviously, it skipped a few generations and went from Tandi to Kunuma. Fortunately, not inherited by Hosanna, nor indeed, it appears, by Kuchava. She's being very contrary, though. I take back what I said. She might not be as smiley as her mother, but she's certainly being contrary. Ooh, Philip's question is a tricky one. Philip wants to know how far would you have to go to find females not related to safari. Actually, not that far. if I think about it, I mean, just to the south of where we are now is Sibuya's territory, and she, as to the best of my knowledge, is not in any way related to Safari. For those of you that don't know, Safari was Karula's mother. So I don't think that she's related. Inkanyeni was not related to her either. Inkanyeni is on the eastern side of Tandi's territory. Shluva had a connection to Inkanyeni. Might have been a sister. And then who else? Salahesh was not related to... Shadulu's not related to Safari, nor is, to the best of my knowledge, unless... I'm trying to think if Karula's brother... No, Karula's brother went north, didn't he? He never went south. Or Karula's brother from a different litter. So, no. Shadulu's not related. Salaheshe was not related. Tiani was not related. Tiani, of course, is in Kruger at the moment. Salahesh died, was it a year ago? Or a little bit over that? Which I think upset Tristan terribly because he used to work at Simbambili, and of course, Salahesh was their Karula, basically. Beautiful leopard, and her daughter Tiani is absolutely exquisite. Possibly the most exquisite creature I've ever seen. And I have seen many beautiful leopards. So I think that would sum up who's not related to Safari, unless one of you, of course, have caught me out and there's some obscure relationship. Sean, yes, that thought did occur to me while you were with James and he was talking about Kunuma, but now, of course, I didn't say it. But you're absolutely right. If Mvula is Kuchava's father, and if he was Sindile's father, that would make them half-siblings as well, in much the same way that Hlalamba and Hosana are half-siblings, thanks to Tingana's input into matters. What a delicate way of phrasing it, input into matters. I like that. And they are also... Hosana is Hlalamba's uncle, so she is his niece. So we have that situation quite frequently with leopards. The whole point of the male dispersing, of course, is to make sure that this doesn't really happen and that there's not a large amount of inbreeding. But it's almost impossible to prevent completely. And if Hosana stays on Juma, and if he manages to defend it as his territory when Tingana retires into a nomadic lifestyle, then he will at one point presumably mate with Hlalamba, as well as Tandi. Potentially, if she's still around. You've got absolutely no qualms about such things. And of course, there's a possibility that Karula's father and Tandi and Shadow's father were the same leopard as well. Kuchava, you're a horrible leopard. Okay, guys, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave Kuchava to make space for other vehicles. So while we navigate our way out of here, off you go across to the Mara to join Isaac, and luckily some living buffalo.
Here I have an animal, one of the only few animals named after one of our great cities, Cape Town, Cape of Good Hope, it is called. This is one animal that the Sausage Tree Pride preys on a lot. They have mastered the art of killing this great animal. So big, you cannot imagine any animal bringing it down. These are Bachala bulls, and over here, they're wallowing in mud to apply an extra layer that acts like sunblock or also insect repellent. Some weeks back, we witnessed the 3 Sausage Tree Pride females feeding on a carcass, and they were joined by their 3 cubs, who are the only ones we thought they had. These are cubs belonging to Miti, a lioness that loves climbing trees. Little did we know that she had an extra cub. I would like to share something about these three little wonders that we have from the Sausage Tree Pride. These Sausage Tree Pride cubs were born during the December short rains. We had heard there were 4, but on 2 occasions only met 3, assuming the 4th one to have died. Then, on our 3rd meeting, we heard the distress call of another cub. Often, mothers will abandon weak cubs, but this little one is a survivor. Struggling to find its way home, it climbed out of a gully and finally reunited with the pride. That is a beautiful pride of lions, and we have followed them for quite a while, and we will be following them in the near months and years to see what goes on in their daily lives. Here I am still with the Cape buffalo. As I said, it's one of the most fortunate animals to be named after one of our great cities. We find them here in big numbers. An animal related to our domestic cow, but you cannot tame it. It still contains its wild mentality. It will go and bite and kick. So it has no use for us, and this is the best place for it. Those sitting down there have had the feel, and so they're chewing the cud and enjoying the peaceful afternoon sunlight. The twitching of the ears is trying to chase away flies that are disturbing, and that's the work of the oxpeckers. Yes, I'm also very happy and excited to have witnessed the 4th cub reunion. I hope he's going to do well. This is all about nature, where sometimes you think you know all until it proves you wrong. And actually, I always thought there were 3, but I'm glad, we saw the 4th one and survived. Those are oxpeckers, yellow-billed oxpeckers, one of the 2 oxpeckers we find in the Mara. He says, get out of there, I don't want you there. Just go a little bit more behind. These are oxpeckers that clean ticks and ectoparasites that disturb the buffalo. It's a symbiotic relation where, they clean the buffalo of any insects and the buffalo gives them food. These guys are in a pristine place. There is water not very far. There is plenty of grass, and the scenery is breathtaking. This is an animal that you don't want to be close to, because although they're so heavy, they weigh almost a ton, they can give you a run for your money. They are very fast and can tap a very sharp twists, and those horns can hook on you and actually kill you. It's an animal that enjoys these great plains, and it does very well. The only animal that preys on it, it's the lion, although young ones sometimes succumb to clan of hyenas, where they outmaneuver mothers and get the young ones. So when crossing the river, they might be eaten by crocodiles. Yes, and this guy is quite busy here, enjoying his little evening grass. I'll take you all the way down to Jamie with a cuckoo.
We had a cuckoo for you, but it's flown away, naturally. Stood there, sat there, waiting patiently until it heard that we were going to go live, and then it flew away. It was a Levalliance cuckoo, an adult, but it's gone. Anyway, still a lovely afternoon out here. Do you want to go to Lauren now, or are we going to do a leopard? I'm now talking, of course, to Kirsten. She says we're actually going to link to Lauren and her lions, which are there-ish.
I actually thought Kirsty said that James was cuckoo, but she said he had a cuckoo, so that makes a lot more sense now. So our 2 lions are flat, but we do have another Nkuhuma female who has just came and joined the slumber party. So there's 2 females here belonging to the Nkahuma Pride and 1 avoca that we tend to call avocado here. It just comes naturally. So I've got a little bit of a spanner in the works with 3 of them here. So I'm not sure if mating will indeed take place, but it's interesting dynamics. I haven't seen a male lion of this status be so close to a female before without mating. So we're really sitting on the edge of our seats here, hoping that they are going to get up, but to no avail. They did make a brief stretch earlier, but that is literally all the movement we have had. And of course, we can't get you any closer. We are stuck with this angle. So I really don't know if the avoca is mating with them or not. Now, as I mentioned before, they do mate fast and furiously. It's an ongoing thing for a number of days. And they do it very, very regularly. And this is to combat the fact that it's not always easy for a female to get pregnant. So they mate a lot to stimulate ovulation and then, of course, fertilization. So it's an exhausting event for both of them. And by the end of the sort of mating period, by maybe day 4 or 5 or even 6, it's known to go on for, the lioness is, of course, exhausted. And the male obviously becomes exhausted as well. And it's even known that the male may become too exhausted that he sort of leaves the shenanigans and another male may come in. So I am wondering if maybe, they've been mating for some time now. I do know that mating pairs have been seen around here regularly. And maybe it's sort of coming to the end of their love affair. So maybe they are both quite generally hungry and exhausted. Miss Anna is asking something. Can you repeat that, Kirsty?
2 of them were missing the other day.
Oh, Miss Anna's saying 2 of them were missing the other day. Okay, Seb helped me out there. Yes, that's exactly right. The Nkahuma Pride were missing some members, and there has been different females actually seen mating with different males. There's been quite a few mating pairs being spotted by different people on the reserve here. So yes, Miss Anna, that is correct. There was some missing. But after the sort of mating spree is over, they do go back and join their pride again. And the avoca may just go off on his own and look for his sort of other coalition mates. Or he may want to spend a bit of lone time just chilling out after the exhausting week he's had with the female. So I am beginning to think that this could be the sort of tail end of the love affair of these 2. But it's still to be confirmed. They're still literally flat cats. Now, the sun was never really out today, to be honest, but it's obviously nearing to sunset time. We're getting to that time of day where it does become a lot cooler and the light changes, so we are hoping that they might spring into action soon. And if they do not, let's still go across to Jamie and see what Kuchava is up to.
All good news is that we are able to stay in this Kuchava sighting, because apparently there aren't any other vehicles coming, which I thought there were. So that's good news. We can sit with Kuchava just a little bit longer. It comes as a huge relief. There was a hyena that made an appearance 2 seconds ago. I'm not 100% sure which hyena it was. It looked like it might have been June, but it was very difficult to tell because all I could see was its head and its shoulders sticking up above the tops of the grass. But it came very, very close to her. It definitely wasn't pretty or corky. That much I can tell you. So hyena made a brief appearance and then shuffled off past her. So obviously they've gathered together, attracted by the smell of her kill. And apparently it was a dacre, so I suspect that she has finished off what was left of it. And now is just sleeping off a rather full belly. Still haven't had a good look at her tummy. When we first drove into the sighting, I did have a chance to look, and we did look, and I didn't see any signs of suckle marks, but she was kind of covered by grass, so I wouldn't call that a confirmation. For those of you that don't know, Kuchava was seen with suckle marks over the course of the past few weeks, and I've been sort of hoping that her cubs might be old enough to bring to a kill. When was she first seen with suckle marks? Was it end of last year? Or was it this year? There you go. Giraffe Girl is saying that she can't wait for Kuchava's new cubbies. And of course, it's sort of around about 6 weeks to 2 months old that the mothers will start taking them to kills. So it's possible that they are around here. Do you remember how we used to spend time with Karula and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and only sort of right towards the end of an evening she'd start to chuff and call the cubs out of hiding, and you would never ever know where they were. Often we would go and sit with Karula for hours and not even realize the cubs were there. They would curl themselves up in a bush or underneath some grass, and you would just be completely gobsmacked when they did make an appearance. I remember taking the entire crew once down to the fire break on Gowrie Main when Karula was there with the cubs, and we stared and we stared and we stared into trees looking for those little things. I don't think we ever found them in the end. We were desperately trying to find them. So it's possible that she has cubs here, for all we know. And she won't be too concerned. Actually, that's not true. I think she probably would be more concerned by the presence of the hyena if she did have cubs here. I think she'd be more alert and she'd be watching it. Unless, I suppose, if she knew that the cubs were safely ensconced in a tree somewhere. Kuchava is very sleepy now, so while we wait to see whether or not she's going to get up, let us, as Kirsty just said, go across to James so he can disquass one of the other leopards.
We've just had the most wonderful sighting of 5 starlings sitting on that bush. Greater blue-eared glossy starlings. At least we still have one. There we are. Anyway, 5 has become 2, and now we're going to talk about Quarantine, the male leopard. Righty. Now, Quarantine was littermate of Kunuma, the Senegal bush male, and that is him over there, born in December of 2012, to Karula and father Mvula. Now, he is a 3-3 male leopard. I think that's... let's just play this a second. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, I think, on that side. Now, what's interesting about this cat, I think, is the fact that his head is basically entirely square. It's totally angular. Look at it there. It's just basically, it looks like he's got a box stuck on the top of his neck. Hosana's got much rounder cheeks compared with this chap. And I noticed this, actually, I'm terrible at recognizing these animals, but I noticed this the first time I saw him. The other thing to note, apparently, now, I still can't make this out. There's a pound sign on his eye, just above his eye. And I think, I still cannot see it. I'm just going to keep playing it and see if I don't, in this clip, manage to see it. Let me go back a little bit here. Louise says it's on the other eye. I just cannot see it. A pound sign. I'm assuming we're talking about that, are we? I just don't see it. Anyway, I've never been able to see it, but he does apparently have a pound sign above his eye. Anyway, there it is. Let's carry on. But you can see very, very boxy face. Now, his disposition, a lot more friendly than Kunuma's. I've never saw him snarl. I didn't see him many times, and I never had any kind of feeling that he was uncomfortable with our presence or discomforted by our presence. It just goes to show that those who are, quite chilled out often get the spoils, because, of course, this cat became territorial long before, was quite a lot longer before than you'd kind of have expected it. It's tongue-tied there a bit. Sorry about that. And he became territorial basically at the age of 4, which is quite young. And he started mating fairly soon thereafter. And we'll have a look at that now. Let me just go back to where I need to be. And apparently he has a runway of spots on his back. I've seen that on many leopards, so I'm not sure that that's a particularly good identifier. All right, now, so this is now October 2016. So I guess, yeah, I mean, he's not quite 4 yet, and this is him. You can see he's had a couple of scraps already. He's filled out a bit, but his face is still very square. And he's moved on to Cheetah Plains, which is far to the east of where we are now. Stocky fellow. And this is where he started establishing himself. Now, originally, I'm just going to stop it there, because there he is, looking grumpy. And here is Mrs. Robinson, a.k.a. Nkanyeni. So that is a 4-year-old male leopard. And that there, I think Nkanyeni at this stage was 11, if I'm not mistaken. So there's quite an age difference there. Now, he went off to Cheetah Plains in the far east. The dominant male of the area, I suppose there really wasn't one. His father spent a lot of time there in his early retirement, but it wasn't the core of his territory ever. I don't know of another big male leopard who operated in that area other than his older brother, Shivambalana, who is 2 years older than him. But Shivambalana, who I only saw once, disappeared and apparently operates now in the Kruger far east of Cheetah Plains. So interestingly, the 3 brothers, Shivambalana, Quarantine and Kunyuma, actually have territories quite possibly contiguous with each other, which is quite interesting. Anyway, let us watch Quarantine's first encounter with Mrs. Robinson. There she is, you can see, testing him out, saying, "Come on, young man, I have a need." And that's basically how leopards behave. You can see that that's exactly how she's behaving. She's getting a little bit closer. They'll always approach with caution to start with, because they don't know how the male's going to react, and you can see how much bigger he is than she is. That is classic cat in heat behavior. He is now deeply confused and ashamed, and a little while later, she eventually manages to convince this cat, Quarantine, that, well, this is what an adult male leopard does if he wants to hold a territory. Well done. Now, that was in 2017, so it was a little bit after he was 4, but he's still 4 years old there. Now, that's quite young, I think. He's a solid cat, though, and he's certainly bigger than Hosana is now, but that's to be expected, because Hosana is about a year and a bit younger than this cat is here. He'll be that big, I suspect, at about the same time. So, very interesting. And now he set himself up at Cheetah Plains. When you next come to me, what I will do is draw a little map for you. Chris, this is something that distresses me a great deal. Quarantine. He's called Quarantine because he was often seen on the clearings outside camp called Quarantine Clearings. Now, I've lamented the fact that we have anything named Quarantine anywhere in this area, because it's a medical term that conjures up images of smallpox and horrific diseases that are bubonic plague, that people had to be kept away from other people because they had those horrible diseases. And so when you call a leopard that, you think that, well, he must have bubonic plague or leprosy or smallpox or something like that. But no, it isn't like that. He's called that because he used to spend time on the clearings outside camp. So, yeah, I think they could have found a better name for him than that. I'm not normally fussy about these names, but that particular one I think is an appalling leopard name. Quarantine, smallpox, pestilence, disease. Not very nice. Much better name, of course, is Guchava, which means she who is afraid. But she isn't really very afraid at all.
Yes, smallpox would be a terrible name for a leopard. Quarantine is definitely better than the name smallpox or measles or something like that. Or vaccination. Imagine if we had a leopard called Vaccination. That would be absolutely appalling. Kuchava is a lovely name in comparison. It really is. Hey, girl. Yes, you're beautiful and you've got a lovely name. It suits her. I really feel that It suits her. It fits her perfectly. She looks like a Kuchava. I know, obviously, people grow into their names, and so do leopards. I, for example, my first name is not Jamie, but I've just always been a Jamie for as long as I can remember. And apparently from 2 days old, I was a Jamie. And leopard's much the same, I guess. Hosanna is a Hosanna. It's perfect for him. Shadow, of course, used to be called Tingana at one point, for she was quite shy in comparison to Tundi. No surprises there. And then it morphed into Shadow because, of course, she was like a shadow in the night. And there's lots of different names out here. Kuchava, she of beautiful name and beautiful face, has not moved at all. Well, she's slowly drooping over the side of this dip. I think by the end of this afternoon she may actually have slid all the way down to the bottom and be lying in a very uncomfortable pile of sand. That's the way she seems to be going. She's actually melting. She's been trying to get comfortable, but she's actually just melting down over the side. Now, earlier on today, I mentioned the disconcerting silence of the Duke of Djuma, definitely not Kuchava's father, but Tingana himself. The good news is that he seems to be making a comeback.
Tingana is sawing at last. His calls filtered through the woodland and brought us in to join his morning patrol. But the duties of a territorial male require more than just calling. The Duke had to make sure to double-check each and every scent mark, checking that no male had taken advantage of his silence. He then deposited his own scent mark at the same time. Perhaps the scent of buttered popcorn was irresistible, because he settled down to give his own scent mark a taste. I can only hope it tastes as good as it smells. Things are not that desperate yet, Tingana. Stick with squirrels.
Go too far into anthropomorphizing the leopards. They do something like licking their own urine, and we are sharply reminded that they are, in fact, wild animals governed by very different rules to humans, because, of course, it's considered something of a taboo. So, first of all, whittle all over the place to mark your territory, and secondly, to then lick it afterwards. Highly, highly unpleasant habit. If it is something that you do, I apologize for offending you, and I do hope that you get help. I don't know why he did that. I assume because there was something that smelt interesting there, and perhaps he just thought rather than phlegm and grimacing, he just thought he would actually transfer it onto his vomeral nasal organ via his tongue, that organ that sits at the top of his mouth. Or maybe he just wanted to taste. Maybe it's something he's always wanted to do. Maybe he's walked around going, my urine smells amazing. It smells just like popcorn. Hey there, Lily, who is 8 years old. My sincerest apologies for talking about licking your own urine. Definitely not the most appropriate way I could have gone into answering your question. Now, Lily wants to know whether or not Tingana might have gone quiet because something scared him. It's possible, Lily. Perhaps as he's been feeling a little bit under the weather, maybe he heard other male leopards and decided that during that time he didn't want to call because he wanted to stay quiet and wait until he was a little bit better. So he wasn't ready to call yet, but when he got a little bit better and he could draw a bit more attention to himself, then he gained a bit more confidence and he started to call once again. Maybe it's a bit like that as a human as well. When you get a bit of a fright, and maybe you don't want to talk for a little bit because you get a bit of a shock. And then once again, when you realize that you can trust yourself to be brave enough and strong enough to do it, then you're ready to talk once again. Maybe it was something like that. That was very, very intuitive of Lily, who is 8 years old. Having a nice snooze there, Kuchava. Could you not have faced us? For this shall be my last few moments with you. Could you not have turned and looked at us? No? Okay. Fair enough. As discussed, they are wild animals, and definitely not on our time frame. Now, one thing I find out here is that one always should stop and appreciate the sunset. It's something that should never, ever be taken for granted.
Well, my game drive has taken me all the way down, and there has been no much luck with the cuts, so I decided to come back to this quite rested clan of hyenas. Over here, mothers have come back, and the little ones are very happy to see them, and they're all getting their fair share of milk. Those two there, looks like they are getting it, but there is one to the right that is not getting it as much. Before you came in, he was being chased around, but now looks like he's getting. There is another mother here who is quite busy doing what she's supposed to do, and you can tell this cub is lucky. He is the only one, so he can utilize those two tits without interference of anybody else or fighting with anybody else. Unlike dogs and unlike cats, hyenas have only two mammary glands. Could you repeat the question, please? I got Rashni, but I didn't get the question. Yes, simplicide or infanticide is very common. Very much like in eagles, siblings will try and outnumber one another, and that's by killing each other to get all the food and milk. That is called siblicide or infanticide or Cainism. Remember, in the great book, they say between Cain and Abel, when he killed his old brother so he could get all the food. This is the same thing that applies here, but usually it is when cubs are born of the same sex, then they will fight. These two are still fighting, and I would say they are the same sex. Look at that, quite funny. Yeah, both of them want milk. Yes, if both are born of the same sex, let's say females, then at a very early age, one will try and kill the other one. If they're born males, same thing will apply. So it does happen quite a lot, and it's something that we cannot interfere or change. Look at that guy. This is the guy I saw earlier, and he looks very scruffy. The mom is not back, so he might have survived by killing his younger brother. That's another older one than the other one that went to the right. There is so many young ones in this clan. We still haven't identified the matriarch yet, and in the coming months we'll be able to see who is the matriarch, but here there might be matriarchs because there are so many females with lots of young ones. I don't know how we'll be able to identify. We might have just to go by giving them names, but up to now I haven't actually picked some identification marks that usually pinpoint certain individuals or characters. So it will take me a bit more time to come and just sit here and observe. Look at those two. Look, those two looks like siblings, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, they look like they're the same age. Quite young. That's another one. And he's got a trophy. Oh, a skeleton. Huh. Yeah, and somebody else just came in. He wants to have a fair share of that skeleton. Yeah, there are quite a lot of them. Looks like they have a little jungle gym behind that bush. That's where they're all going to play. Or they don't want to see us. They don't show us that they're starving. They're eating skeletons, maybe. That's why they're hiding. But they are not starving. There is enough milk. I'm just joking. There's enough milk. And everything is all fine here. There is enough food. I'll be here. So let me take you to Jamie, who's got something on a map.
What do we have here, everybody? Well, everything is fine. Up in the Mara is a map of the northern Sabi Sands. All right, just to very quickly, that's Biffleshoek, that's Torchwood, that's Djuma, Simbambili, Arathusa, Elephant Plains, Arathusa Private, Londolozi, Malamala, various things including Little Gari, Chitwa, very important, Cheetah Plains, and Nkoro. There are two little properties south of Chitwa as well, Nkoro. Okay, then the Kruger Park on the east, that's there. And now I'll be able to explain where those male leopards are. As far as I understand it, and I don't know this for sure, Shivambalana occupies pretty much that area there, I think. Young Quarantine has taken over, I don't know if he goes all the way into Biffle's Hook, but let's just say that he doesn't, and he's got Torchwood. And basically half of Torchwood, Nkoro, Cheetah Plains, that's probably his boundary there. So maybe he does go into the Kruger a little bit, and maybe Shivambalan is a little bit further off that way. We've got now his brother, the Senegal Bushmale in Mala Mala, a.k.a. Kunuma, is probably that area down there. So we've got Shivambalana, Quarantine, and Kunuma. Tingana currently occupies this area here. And of course, Tingana is unrelated to this bunch. All right, he's the only one that's unrelated to these two. So that's Tingana over there. And then the Hook is this area here. That's Hukumuri's territory there, plus minus. Gijima up north here in Biffle's Hook. And probably this skittish male who we think Tingana may have had the odd run-in with in this area over here. All right. So, Linda, you say that this is the best drawing you've ever seen me do. Well, thank you very much. I'm very complimented by that. I'll just draw you a few leopards because I know you'll enjoy that. There's Gijima. Here's Tingana. Yes, Laura Moore, I definitely do need a second colour marker. That's Tingana. Grr. Yeah, good. Okay. So that's where all the male leopards are, especially the three that we showed you. So that's, well, typically horrific, really. Let's go back inside and have a look at our final leopard, who was my first favourite leopard here, until he shuffled off this mortal coil. I must say, I use that term, shuffled off this mortal coil, quite a lot. And it is, I didn't know this, but it was pointed out to me by a viewer that it's a Shakespearean term. I've forgotten which play it comes from. But I was saying shake off this mortal coil, and this viewer was deeply upset by my misquoting of the bard. And so I do apologise. Now, Mvula, there he is. Grizzled old fellow he was in March of 2015. There we are. Now, he was born in 2005. And so by this stage, he's already 10. He did not age particularly well, I have to say. He got old pretty quickly, and he was never an enormous male leopard. He was a 4-3 male. You can see the 4 spots here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he had 3 on the other side. But his eyes were utterly captivating. Look at them. Just a very slight hint of blue. Anyway, there he is. He's looking much better. He started, in this particular picture, he started to lose mass, though, on his hindquarters much more quickly than I would have expected. And it's this gap here. Can you see that little gap there? That for me is always the indicator that a cat or dog is starting to get on. Started to lose, I mean, he looks hugely heavy in front there. And so at this stage he is, well, he's 11 years old. We don't know exactly which month he was born. Anyway, he was born on Lion Sands, which is down to the south of the what am I going for? Of the Sabi Sands. There he is, looking much older still now. And there he is, of course. Well, I mean, look, he was 12 years old, so that's not too bad. He went on for a lot longer than we thought he would. So at this stage now, as you see him there, he is a leopard without territory. He's gone into retirement. And he did this, I'm trying to remember when it was. I think pretty much Big Cat Week in 2016. Was it 2016? Yeah, I think it was. When this cat basically went into retirement. He we followed him for a full day. I remember it was during the Big Cat Week, during the TV show. We followed him for a full day. He'd eaten something in a tree, and then he went off and he killed a monitor lizard, and we lost him for the afternoon show. And thereafter, he stopped marking territory. And he spent a lot of time on Buffelshoek, and then he'd go down to Cheetah Plains, where there wasn't a big territorial male. There was just Quarantine and Shivambalana. They were setting themselves up there. And he actually, in his retirement in Buffelshoek, he mated with a female who, unfortunately, Tingana then took exception to and ate after he had mated with her. So his chances of leaving a little bit more of a genetic legacy disappeared there. Now, here he is. You can see he's losing it in the hindquarters completely. He's a very old cat at this stage. Look, he could have been as old as 13. So we don't know exactly which month he was born, but of course he was, born 2005. He could have been as old as 13 here. But you can see he's not looking great at this stage, and these are the signs you're going to watch out for on Tingana now as he gets older. Look at the way the hips are starting to stick out, despite the fact that the forequarters are absolutely fine, and he's got food in his belly. And then look at that picture of him. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this may well have been the last sighting we had of him. The last picture I saw of him was at Londolozi, where he just looked horrendous. Unfortunately, he just come to the end. So, may have made it all the way to 13 years. But wasn't he a beautiful leopard? And I especially loved this. These just slightly blue eyes that he had. And I also liked him because he wasn't big. He was, I would have said, an smaller than average male leopard, and of course being slightly smaller than average myself, I quite like that. Anyway, that was Mvula. We've got one more clip of his to show you. Have we got time? We do have time. Quickly, let me quickly play it for you. Let's play as much of Mvula as we can. Now, I think in this particular clip, he is chased by a lion. Look at him being chased here by this lion. Look at this. It's amazing. Look at him being chased by the lion. Lion chasing him. Up he goes into the tree and escapes all the way up to the top. Absolutely brilliant this was. To see that. Absolutely amazing. And you can see, obviously, he was terrified when it happened, but he managed to climb up easily out of the lioness's way, and you saw the lioness go up after him. Shall we look at that again? That's actually really cool. Let's watch it again. I like to be able to do this. Okay, let's go right to the beginning. A bit of a blur to start with. Here we go. Leopard running, lioness catching, leopard straight up, lioness actually fell off the tree there. That's classic. So, a lioness in a flat-out sprint will be faster than a leopard. A leopard will be quicker off the mark, but the lioness's greater stride will allow it to catch a leopard like this in a flat-out sprint. And so the leopard has got no option but to explode to top speed as fast as possible and then jump up into a tree, which is exactly what he did. There he is. A very experienced, wily fellow. And then a lady came by. Was it a lady? I think it was. I don't actually know who that was. It's Karula. It's Karula, is it? I don't remember who that was. It was Shadow, sorry. There we are. Shadow came by to say hello. And this probably resulted in quite a lot of mating thereafter. Interestingly, that what I didn't say about Sindile, she's definitely an estrus, that leopardess. There we go. And the mating took place. Interestingly, with Sindile, we don't know who his father was. Could have been Mvula, could have been Tingana, could have been another one. Anyway, so that was the 19th of September 2016. May have resulted in... Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't that have meant that not Barbara... Yeah. He could have been not Barbara's father as well. That's quite interesting. I'd forgotten that. I now remember that we've talked about that before. So maybe Tingana wasn't not Barbara's mother. At least father. Fantastic. Just great machinations. Thank you very much for joining us on this little trip down memory lane. I hope you enjoyed it. For the last few minutes, let's go back to Jamie Patterson down with Guchava and Hyena at Chitwa.
Kirsten is the hero of the hour because she allowed you to come back last minute to our last minute hyena. Not the same one that was bothering Kuchava, but a different one, a little one. And I can't see who it is because it keeps going behind a bush. Come back here, please. Are you going to the water? What is your plan? We're right on the boundary with Gowrie, little Gowrie. No. Come, give us a good side shot. Come on. Ah, there you have it. How's that? There we go. So, close to Torchwood. It would be so tempting to follow it if only we could. But unfortunately we cannot, for I have an engagement that I have to head off to a little bit later. So sadly, the search for the hyena den will have to continue, well, tomorrow. And on that note, it brings us to the end of this, the 33rd episode of Safari Lives, as our hyena wanders off onto Little Gowrie. All that's left for us to do is to bid you a farewell and, of course, say a big thank you for joining us and of participating in the conversation of Leopard's Past. I'm sure you all enjoyed it. I know that James did. And what a walk down memory lane it has been. See us tomorrow for the Sunrise Safari, wherever you happen to be. Enjoy yourselves.